Alright, what's going on guys? In this video, I'm going to show you how to upgrade the Gideon, the Oathsworn Planeswalker deck. As always, these decks are not intended to be tier 1 competitive decks. If you want that, consider checking out the latest tournament results, and also if you want the most powerful deck you can get for a cheap price, I would highly recommend the challenger decks, which are perfect for competitive play. But with this video, our plan is to upgrade this deck card by card, sticking to this deck's themes and doing it on a budget, as we will not exceed $15 USD with our upgrade. I know the currency isn't relevant to everyone and I apologize for that, but these decks typically retail for $15 USD, so we're roughly spending how much the decks cost to upgrade them. So the Gideon the Oathsworn Planeswalker deck is an Orzhov or black-white deck that is sort of built around life gain, kind of. It has a Johnny's Pridemate and Gideon's Company, both of which get a +1/+1 counter whenever we gain life. Then it has things like Vampire Opportunist and Cruel Celebrant, both of which like to constantly drain the opponent of their life. So the deck likes to drain the opponent's life total while bolstering its own life total and then capitalizing on that with things like a Johnny's Pridemate and whatnot. So the exclusive cards that come with the deck, the cards you can only get by purchasing it, are Gideon himself, along with Desperate Lunge, Gideon's Company, and Gideon's Battle Cry. And as always, there are some pretty bad cards we need to pull out of this thing. Cards like Enforcer Griffin and War Screecher are kind of terrible, so we're going to be cutting out cards like this and replacing them with things that are just a whole lot better. I mean, just compare Enforcer Griffin to like Lyra Dawnbringer and do I need to say anything? Just look at them. Yeah, Lyra Dawnbringer a little bit better. So yeah, we're going to be doing that. We're going to be taking out terrible cards and we're going to be replacing them with better cards and with a $15 budget. So let's get started. First off, we're going to take 2 Enforcer Griffins out for 2 Vampire Sovereigns. I mean, do we need to discuss this? They're both 5 mana, they're both 3/4s, they both have flying, but the Vampire drains the opponent for 3 and the Griffin doesn't. I mean, it's literally just a 6-point life swing for free, because you're paying the same amount, you're getting the same creature, you're just getting that life point swing for no reason. It also is perfectly on theme for this deck, so it just seems a little bit better. Next, we're going to take out Vampire Opportunist and replace it with a Cruel Celebrant. The Opportunist is just way too slow and it requires way too much mana to get any effect out of it. I mean, sure, if you have a million mana then it's kind of great, but most of the time it's just going to be a 2 mana 2/1 with no abilities because you're never going to be able to activate it. Cruel Celebrant, on the other hand, allows us to drain the opponent for 1 every single time a creature we control dies. In a game of Magic, creatures are constantly dying, they're constantly trading with each other in combat and all that stuff, and if we have a Cruel Celebrant, we just get to constantly take our opponent's life total down while constantly recovering some of our own, so it's kind of great. Next, we're going to take out a War Screecher for a 4th copy of a Johnny's Pridemate. Once again, the War Screecher is just too clunky, requiring way too much mana to be effective. The Pridemate, on the other hand, gives us the possibility of a massive creature, and our opponent is going to have to prioritize killing it in most games, which is okay, because we really want those Cruel Celebrants staying in play for a long time. So if this soaks up removal spells, it kind of sucks, but also it's acceptable because just having Cruel Celebrants in play to constantly generate value is kind of fine. So they're either going to kill this and we're going to get to keep our Cruel Celebrants, or this is just going to get massive and be, an absolute beater to pummel the opponent with. So it's kind of great either way. Next, we're going to take out all 4 Desperate Lunges and we will replace them with 4 a Johnny's Welcome. The Desperate Lunges just aren't that useful. I mean, they're fine, they're okay, they're, decent, I guess, but the Johnny's Welcome gives us way more value by allowing us to gain a life every single time we play a creature. This, combined with Cruel Celebrant, means we get a life when a creature enters the battlefield and when a creature leaves the battlefield, as well as, making the opponent lose a life. So just generating all this life from all of our creatures coming into play and dying is kind of the best, and that's generally what we're doing here. Our creatures might not be massive, but they're just going to constantly be be generating value by constantly draining the opponent's life, and I like that a whole lot. Next, we're going to take out 2 Trusted Pegasus for 2 Midnight Reapers. The Trusted Pegasus is alright, but the Midnight Reaper is more what we're looking to do with this deck. It says whenever a creature we control dies, we lose a life and draw a card. Now that might sound bad, but that life loss is going to be negated with Cruel Celebrant and a Johnny's Welcome, and once again it means we can grind out value with our creatures entering the battlefield and dying. If our opponent attacks with a creature, we chump block, it dies, we lose a life and draw a card, but then we gain a life and the opponent loses one, and with that extra card, hopefully we can play it, maybe we gain another life from a Johnny's Welcome, and so on and so forth. These cards can just brick wall the opponent. I mean, what do you do if you're on the other side of this? Unless the opponent has a massive trampling threat in play, which we should be able to deal with in the color black, we have removal spells, but if they just have big clunky creatures that, can't trample over our blockers, we just block and just get all this value. We just constantly drain, we constantly draw, we constantly gain life, and our opponent just gets kind of stuck. They just kind of get locked out of the game in a sense, because they can't effectively attack us without just, like it's a losing position. Even though they're killing our creatures, if we're just constantly shoving a chump blocker in front of an attacker and then just generating all this value, it's like, how do you get through that? It gets kind of difficult, and that's kind of the idea of this deck. Next, we're going to take out 3 Makeshift Battalions and replace them with 3 Playcrafters. So these are both 3 mana 3/2s, but the Playcrafter is much more in line with our strategy. It forces both players to sacrifice a creature or discard a card, and the great thing here is that we're basically going to play this as a spell. Ideally, we just cast Playcrafter and then just sacrifice the Playcrafter. It's kind of like casting a Diabolic Edict in Legacy. Basically, we're going to pay 3 mana, our opponent's going to sacrifice a creature, and our spell is going to go to the graveyard, except in this case, our spell is a creature, so it's going to trigger a Johnny's Welcome, Cruel Celebrant, and Midnight Reaper. But yeah, we're literally just casting an Edict in Standard, but with upside. And of course, if you do have a smaller creature you want to sacrifice, that's perfectly fine as well. We will be generating 1/1 tokens, we'll get to that. But yeah, we do have small creatures we can sacrifice too, so it's even better. It's kind of great. Next, we're going to take out 2 Charmed Stray for 2 Legion's Landing. And that's because Charmed Stray is a trap. Do not fall in the trap. Please don't fall in the trap. This card is terrible. It's easy to fall into the trap of thinking this is going to be some massive monstrous killer cat thing, but realistically it is incredibly unlikely that it'll ever be bigger than a 2/2. I mean, once in a blue moon, you might draw 3 of them, but then you need to hope that they're all going to live long enough to play all of them, and even then, at best, it's a 3/3 with lifelink. I mean, don't get me wrong, a 1 mana 3/3 with lifelink is kind of great, but 99% of the time, it's just going to be a 1 mana 1/1 with lifelink, and occasionally a 1 mana 2/2 with lifelink, which is good, but it's not like this amazing thing. But Legion's Landing, on the other hand, well, first off, it's always just a 1 mana 1/1 with lifelink because it puts a 1/1 token into play. However, the real value comes when we flip it, because if we can flip this thing, we can start pumping out 1/1 tokens every single turn, and they have lifelink. So they're going to trigger all of our stuff and give us another way to gain life for the Pridemate and whatnot. Basically, the synergy with this one is off the chain. I mean, it gives us a constant stream of tokens that can chump block and die to generate life with the Johnny's Welcome, to drain the opponent's life with the Cruel Celebrant, so it just works really, really well with all of our other stuff, which is really nice. Next, we need to take out the other 2 Charmed Strays, and we're going to replace these ones with 2 Healer's Hawk. While these don't have the potential to get +1/+1 counters, they do have flying, and that makes all the difference. Once again, if our opponent doesn't have flyers, we basically have a constant stream of life draining, as our opponent is going to lose a life and we're going to gain a life every single turn. So that's kind of what this deck is doing. It's just constantly draining life, and in a sense this kind of does just that. So yeah, this just works really well in this deck, much better than the Charmed Strays. And then finally, we're going to take out 3 Omnixilus's Cruelty and replace them with 3 Mortifies. This is just a much better removal spell, as it not only destroys any creature no matter the size, but it also allows us to blow up enchantments, which are notoriously difficult to deal with. There are a lot lot of pesky enchantments in standard at the moment, so having the extra utility is kind of great, but even if the opponent doesn't have enchantments, it still kills more creatures than the cruelty for the same 3 mana, so it's just a whole lot better in this spot. And that is all of our upgrades. Going forward with the deck, you can improve the mana base with dual lands, namely Isolated Chapel and Godless Shrine. These lands will vastly decrease your likelihood of getting color screwed, but they also cost a lot of money, so there's that. But they definitely make a huge difference, so if you have them, definitely replace basics with these. There are also a lot of great options for this deck that are just a little bit outside of our budget. The 2 big ones are Settle the Wreckage and Lyra Dawnbringer. The deck is so good at grinding out games with value, but it could really use a board sweeper, and Settle the Wreckage is great because it's one-sided, and being attacked by large creatures is our biggest weakness, and they're really only like $3 or $4. They're not crazy expensive, you only need like 1 or 2 of them. Yeah, it's not terrible, but it's a little bit outside of the budget. And then Lyra gives us a big top-end threat to finish the game with. She can go in place of those Vampire Sovereigns we put in earlier, and this just gives us a way to easily close out games, which is nice. This deck's super grindy, and it's going to drag games out so long that just having a big creature that we can slam onto the battlefield and, you know, just have like a, alright, well, I'm probably going to win now because I have this in play. You know, it's nice to have that. And it also drains life too, so that's kind of what this deck is doing. It has lifelink, so yeah, it's a perfect fit. A couple of those at the top end of the curve in place of those Vampire Sovereigns would be pretty decent. Other potentially good cards, things that I haven't really like tested heavily or anything, but that seem kind of decent, are Ajani, Adversary of Tyrants, Olinda the Dusk Rose, and Dreadhorde Invasion. So the best part about Ajani is his minus ability, which will let us get Cruel Celebrant back from the graveyard, which sounds pretty useful, and his plus ability would allow us to kind of build a big creature if we had to, but ideally just being able to play this and being able to get a Cruel Celebrant back would be pretty nice. Olinda is another card that can capitalize on creatures dying. She gets a +1/+1 counter and stuff like that, but I do admit she's a little clunky at 4 mana, so I don't know if she's perfect, but she's kind of on theme with the deck. It could be tested. I don't know if I would, like, I wouldn't recommend going out and buying them, but if you do have one, you could probably slot one in just to kind of see. It feels like it'd be clunky, but also it does a lot of what we're doing, so maybe it's pretty good. It seems decent. And then Dreadhorde Invasion is a lot like Midnight Reaper in that we lose life, but we'll typically gain it back. Plus, it's yet another potential game finisher if we can assemble a massive zombie. And if it does get to a 6/6, by the way, then it gets lifelink, which is what we're looking to do with this deck. So anyway, even without those expensive cards, what we have here is pretty spicy in my opinion. It's definitely significantly more powerful than what came out of the box, and we only had to spend $15 to get here, which is pretty nice. So if you like this video and you want to see more Planeswalker deck upgrade videos like this, check the description. There will be a link to a playlist with many decks released in the past, and be sure to subscribe as there will be plenty more to come in the future. I always aim to do these decks as they're released. They usually take, as you can see with the release of this video, like 3 to 4 weeks because of prices, you know, being kind of chaotic at release, but I do all these decks, so definitely subscribe for more if you want to see more in the future. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. I hope this video was helpful, and I will see you in the next one.